Now we move to Sumesh from NYU, who will be presenting to us attacks on lightweight ciphers from side channel attacks to differential cryptanalysis. Sumesh, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Sumesh Manjunath. I'm a PhD student working under Professor Huda Alzimi from NYU Abu Dhabi in cryptography research lab. In this talk, I'll be briefly describing about the work we have done on lightweight ciphers, starting from the side channel analysis of the ciphers, and then going towards the differential attack by using the side channel informations in the differential cryptanalysis techniques. So to start with, lightweight cryptography is the talk of the town right now. So as we see that by 2025, we might have around 45 billion of IoT devices connected and be generating around 79 petabytes of data. So this huge amount of data will be used to analyze and by using machine learning techniques, and these will affect our life. So in sense that the data has to be protected and data security is more important. And for that, we need a better or robust lightweight cryptographic system, which is easy enough, which takes small area so that it doesn't, so it can be implemented even in the embedded devices, and it has a good protection also. So that's why lightweight cryptography is important at this current point of time. As we see that most of the majority of symmetric cipher designs available. So we have feastal structure in SPN network and addition, rotation, XOR ciphers. It's called ARX design ciphers. Each one has their own advantage and disadvantages, but especially for the lightweight ciphers, ARX designs are much suited for the following reasons. One is that the ARX designs contains only of addition, modular addition, rotation operation, and XOR operation, which are very light in the microcontrollers as well as in the hardwares. And also these are like they have direct opcodes for it, so that it's a standalone operations where we need not have much complex logic is required for the implementation of this kind of designs. And also because you have the opcodes for each of the operations, we can say that most of the designs will probably have a kind of constant time operation, thereby restricting the timing attacks. So, and also it will occupy less memory and it consumes less power also. So this is the reason why ARX designs are much suited for lightweight cryptographic designs. So what we'll be doing, so that's the reason why we choose ARX designs. So what we'll be showing through this presentation is that we'll be start by finding out the weaknesses in the ARX design using side channel techniques, and from there we'll try to improve that by using differential techniques. We'll be borrowing few differential techniques into the side channel analysis, and we'll try to improve the attack complexities. So the goal is basically to increase efficiency of the attack frameworks. So to start with, first, we'll be showing the side channel analysis on Sparks cipher. Before that, I'll briefly describe about this Spark design. Sparks ARX family consists of three variants. One is Sparks 64, 128, and Sparks 128, 128, and Sparks 128, 156. So what this means is Sparks is like a 64-bit of block size and 128-bit of key size. And here generally, it has around n steps, so which is equivalent to rounds in AES, but here they call it steps because we have around each step consists of around R rounds and then one linear mixed layer. So the round functions are basically acts as an non-linear function, like kind of gives a confusion properties, and the linear mixed layer gives us the diffusion property of the design of the complete design. So that's why each steps consist of some n number of rounds and then one linear mixed layer. Here we'll be specifically talking only about the Spark 64 128-bit to show our attack. So here this is the diagram. So this is one step function which has been shown, and then this a box is nothing but the which is the main crux of it. It's called ARX function, which is implemented here, which has the rotation function and addition function and XOR function also. And also we have shown this one round key function here, key scheduling here. The reason why we are using here is we'll be using some of the observation from the key scheduling algorithm also for our attack. So here, like the reason why we do take this is like since it has 128-bit key size, but in the encryption process, the last 32-bit is not used. So only remaining key bits are used and last 32-bit is not used as anywhere in the operation. So, but to extract the complete key, we need some kind of operation which we'll be discussing down the line. So what we have done here is we have taken this one particular A box function, and then we have used CPA technique to extract the 16-bit key. So this K00R is 16-bit and K00L is another 16-bit key function. So what we do is like we'll be trying to divide and conquer it. Using divide and conquer method, we'll be first try to extract the least significant bit, first 8 least significant bit, and then once we are able to extract the first 8 least significant bit, we'll move to the next higher bit, which is the another 8 more significant bit. So through that way, we'll be extracting the K00R function using the correlation power analysis technique. So what we do is we'll try to capture the power traces for some n number of encryption for n number of plain text pass, and then from there we'll be trying to use a correlation power analysis techniques to extract the 8 bits, first 8 bits. And once we extracted that, then we'll move to the next 8 bit. So in that way, we're able to extract the 16 bit of K00R, this particular keys. And what we do next is, once we extracted the right hand side of the key, of the round key, what we do is we'll insert that key. Using that key, we'll be trying to run the CPA attack again to extract the left-hand side of the 16-bit key, so K00L. So through this way, we will be extracting the one round key of this. So for this extraction, since we are using the divide and conquer technique, 8 bits first and then 8 bits next. So the total key guesses will be required is around 2 power 9 key guesses to extract the keys. So for the complete extraction of the whole sub key or the round key is 2 power 10 key guesses is required. The actual brute force to extract this key will be around 2 power 32, but using our technique, we can able to extract the key with just 2 power 10 key guesses. Now, how we'll be using the key scheduling here is like we have 2 observations. Like one is the secret key used is the first round key. So what happens is the K00 and K01 and K02, all these keys are directly used in the encryption, but K03 is not used in the encryption algorithm. So what we do, but the first is K001, K002, and K03 are the first round keys, and K10, K11, and K12 and K13 are the second round keys. And this second round key is used. Second round here the first round keys are used, and then here the second round keys are used. But in both the cases, the last 32-bit the keys are not used. So what we will be doing here is we'll be trying to if you can see from this key scheduling algorithm, K003L is directly used as K10L, and similarly K03R can be retrieved using K10R -1 with the modular operation. So from this observation, what we do is to recover the complete 128-bit key, we'll be running our attack on the first 3 rounds in the left-hand side, and then we'll be running it on the right-hand side. So sequentially. So by applying our attack on these 4 rounds, we were able to extract all the 128-bit keys. All right. So using the proposed technique, we could extract the complete 128-bit keys of SPARX 64-128. The main limitation, the main thing in this is that it requires a large number of plain text to extract the keys. In this experiment, we took around 65,000 encryption of 65,000 encryptions were required to extract the key. So this is quite used, and sometimes it becomes not practical also. And also there were a few ciphers where the complete key recovery is also not possible. Only some part of the key is what can be recovered. So in that cases, what we have proposed is we'll be trying to use differential techniques in side channel analysis, so that we can reduce the number of traces required, and also we can try to recover the complete keys. So how we'll be doing that is, take for example, this is the latest work what we have done. It's under review. What we do is we'll first try to analyze the modular addition function. So what we do is we just try to execute a modular addition of 2 power 8-bit numbers, and then we'll try to capture the trace. So what we do is the only operation happens here is the modular addition operation. So we took, for example, this is the plain text pair A1 and B1, and once we add this both, what we get is 0, 5. So we'll be capturing the trace of this particular operation. Next, what we do, we'll choose a different A2 and B2, and we'll try to add it. And once we do this, what we get is 45, as the number 45 is hexadecimal number. This is the modular addition of a different pair. So this is what the power trace what we get. So the power trace has been captured using Chip Whisperer. We have used the Chip Whisperer board to capture the power trace and also the to execute the attacks. So now what we do here is we'll try to subtract. We'll try to find the power difference between these 2 powers. So which is equivalent to XORing the add 1 and add 1 and add 2. So what we do is once we XOR this add 1 add 2, what we get is 4. 4 is the XOR value of add 1 and add 2, the masked value. Once if you subtract the power traces, so we get a particular spike at this point in the time, which is after in the x-axis after around 10,000. So from this we can say that we could get some kind of information, like what is the exact value of the XOR of modular addition results. So we'll be trying to use this information. So we'll see a few more power differences. Say for example, for power difference of 1, this is the trace difference what we get, and similarly for 2 and 3 until up to 9 we have shown here. So what is the conclusion of this is that just by taking the power differences of 2 traces, we were able to know what will be the value of the XOR. Say for example, if you could see the spikes, say for the 0, 5, if you see this kind of power differences, we can say that the value of the XOR is 5. So value of add 1 and add 2 is 5 is what we can kind of conclude from this information. So with this particular idea, we have taken it and we have tried to extend it to show that that we were able to break or we were able to find some vulnerabilities or weakness in the ARX design ciphers. To show that, we just took an example of SPEC, because SPEC is quite well known. It's one of the NSA ciphers. There will be a lot of attacks shown on spec, but still we wanted to show that whether how this particular technique works on spec. So spec is nothing but it's also a ARX based lightweight cipher proposed by NSA, and it varies from 32-bit to 128-bit as a block size, and key size also varies from 64-bit to 256-bit. So to show our particular attack technique, we focused on spec 32 variant, which has 32-bit block size and 64-bit key size, and alpha and beta are the rotation values, the left rotation and right, the right rotation and the left rotation values, which is 7 and 2 for spec 32 variant, and it has 32 rounds. So this is how the this is the two in the diagrammatic way. This is how the spec round function looks. So what we'll do is first is we'll try to apply a particular technique on spec 32 first round. So what we do is we'll try to choose a 32-bit plain text, and then we'll try to encrypt with the unknown key K, and simultaneously we'll be capturing the power trace of that. And similarly, we'll be choosing a different plain text and we'll be trying to encrypt it, and we'll be capturing a different power trace for that particular plain text. Now, if we take the power difference of these both, which must be equivalent to XOR of xi1 and like xi1 of the first plain text and xi1 of the second plain text. Similarly, yi1 of the first plain text and y2 yi1 of the second plain text. So this is what the delta t must be equivalent to. Now, if you try to substitute the values and see, there is no any unknown values in the equation. So all the variables are known to us, and there is secret key gets XORed and gets removed in the XOR process. So what we see here is like this way only analyzing the first round, we are not able to extract or retrieve any secret bits. So what we do next is we'll try to extend this analysis for the 2 round. So what we'll do is we'll, instead of analyzing only the first round, we'll be trying to analyze the first and second round. So now here what we do is now similarly the xi plus 2 and yi plus 2 is the this is the output of the second round function, where the input is the first round functions. We'll be performing the similar kind of technique where we'll capturing the power trace with the plain text 1 and plain text 2, and then we'll be trying to find the power differences between these 2 traces. Now, once we do that, what we see is K1 is the only unknown in the whole equation, and then remaining are knowns. Now, what we know is xi2 and XOR xi2, these 2 values, we can able to know what exactly is the value of this XOR from the technique what we have shown before. By just XOR, by taking the power difference of these 2 things, we will be knowing what exactly the value of this XOR is. And then we know what is the other unknowns from the plain text values. The only unknown what is there is Ki. By substituting the values, we can find out what is the value of Ki. Now, what we can do is like by enumerating all the 2 power 16 possible keys, we get a set of candidate keys from the for that particular plain text pairs. Now, what we do is if we have more than 1 candidate keys, we'll be choosing a different set of plain text pairs, and we running this experiment again so that the number of candidate keys reduces to 1. So this is thus using this particular technique, we were able to retrieve the 16-bit first round key with very minimal power traces. So this is work in progress work. Kind of we submitted it for the review. We're just waiting for it. They are waiting for the response. And this we have implemented in the ChipWhisperer Lite board, and the spec algorithm is implemented using the Atmega board, which comes along with the ChipWhisperer. Yeah. So what we would like to conclude that, like we have demonstrated that Spark 64 is vulnerable to correlation power attack. So this is basically like ARX based ciphers are also vulnerable to CP attack. It's not that it is not vulnerable, even though we have a it's very good design also. It's difficult to protect against the unprotected version is very difficult to protect. And also we proposed a method to use differential techniques into the side channel analysis so that we can reduce the number of plain text required for the attack. And then the future work, what we are planning to do is we'll be trying to extend this attack using statistical technique like differential or linear, followed by side channel attack. So in sense like we'll be trying to use the side channel information in the rounds, not in the first or second round, maybe in the 7th or 8th or 10th round, so that we could able to combine the statistical attacks along with the side channel attacks. So we are trying to build a generalized model so that both side channel as well as statistical model can be blended together and improve the attack complexities. And finally, we'll try to integrate this with the machine learning techniques so that we can get much more accurate results.
Thank you, Somesh. We have time for questions if anyone has any questions for Somesh. Maybe I have a question from my side. So the way you conducted your experiments, did you try to do the attacks separately on the modular addition, which somehow it is known to be resistant to DPA attacks, and then you did it separately on the XOR and the rotation parts?
We mainly focused only on the modular addition because that is the only needed function on the whole ARX based designs. So that's the reason why we choose only the addition modulo operation, and we try to understand how this works.
Okay, and my second question at the end, you mentioned some machine learning based side channel analysis. I mean, I don't know if I have started for that, and you can give us any insight on the methodologies that you will be using.
No, we haven't started yet. So right now we are trying to finalize and build a generalized model out of this blended attacks. And then we'll be trying to, once you build a generalized model out of it, then we'll be trying to integrate the machine learning techniques into the model so that we can improve the attack complexities, is what our future goals is. But we haven't started working on that, but we have it's in the pipeline.
All right, thank you, Somesh. So I will assume that there are no further questions. We give you a virtual round of applause, Somesh. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank TI also for giving us the opportunity to present our work from our lab, and thank you very much.